Hello, good evening and welcome to UPfront. My name is Raymond Akwa. Tonight, after a recent wave of arrests and prosecutions, we'll be interrogating the renewed calls for the law criminalizing the publication of false news to be revoked. But that's after this break. You're welcome back. This is UPfront. My name is Raymond Akwa. Tonight on UPfront, now from journalist Kwabena Bobiansa to the NPP's Bono Region Chairman, they've all been dealt with recently based on the law. The law is Section 208 of the Criminal Code. This law criminalizes the publication of false news. Now, there is, after the recent wave of arrest, a massive call, which has been there before, it's gone back and forth, even before we had actually removed the criminal and seditious libel laws from our laws as a people, that we cannot, as a free society, tolerate anything that limits that particular freedom. But is this to guarantee unfettered freedom? How do we ensure the floodgates are not opened if this law is indeed repealed? Now, I have a wonderful panel for this conversation. With me in studio now is a man who's previously been at the Interior Ministry. He was a deputy minister in that particular ministry. He's still in Parliament and very vociferous. He's ranking on the Interior Committee in Parliament. And the Honorable James Agaga, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
We will be joined by the Chairman of Parliament's Legal Parliamentary Affairs Committee pretty soon as we get to expand this conversation. A crusader of the revocation of this law, a man of extraordinary competence, Professor Koko Asare, will be joining us in this conversation too. But for now, you can also join us via the various social media channels as we get to understand what the dynamics are in our quest to ensure that this law is properly reviewed and given the representation that it's supposed to be. So, Honorable, the question is in the title of this conversation. The topic is pretty clear. Is it time for us to repeal the law on publication of false news? But because you're a member of Parliament and because you're also a lawyer, let we who are not lawyers and do not have a full and better appreciation of the law understand what monster this Section 208 is.
Well, Raymond, thank you, and let me say good evening to your viewers. Well, Raymond, the law or the particular provision which deals with the publication of false news as an offense under the Criminal and Other Offences Act, Act 29, that is, 1960, is found in Section 208 of that law. And what the law basically seeks to do is to criminalize the publication or, if you like, reproduction of statements, rumors, or reports which are likely to cause fear and alarm to the public or to disturb the public peace. That's it. So if you come out with a publication and it turns out that the publication is false, or whether it is based on a rumor, and there is a likelihood that that publication can inspire fear or cause alarm or can result in a breach of public order or peace, you are caught under Section 8.
So if we break it down, it's not only be the publication of the false news. Then, okay, so first and foremost, there should be a publication.
That's right.
Two, that publication should be false.
It should be
and
false.
Established to be false.
Yes.
Then it's not only it being false that's the problem, but if it has a tendency of breaching the public peace or causing fear and alarm.
Yes.
First, it's easy to determine that there's a publication, all right?
Yes.
So it's not only radio and TV. Social media is also another mode of publication in this case.
Yes.
Yeah, but is that not problematic?
It is problematic. I mean, and it has far-reaching consequences. Look, by implication, the continuous existence of this law on our statute books amounts to a repression of free speech. It's a complete repression of free speech.
Really?
Yes, it is. It is. Because if we're talking about public order, a breach of peace, conduct likely to inspire fear in the people, I think we have sufficient legislation to deal with those ones. But if you are talking about the publication bit is problematic.
Okay, now let me understand this.
It is problematic because at what point are you able to establish that a publication put out by a person can occasion a breach of public order or peace, or inspire fear in others? It is too fluid. It's not certain. And you see, one thing about criminal legislation is the certainty of the law itself. The provision that provides for the criminal offense ought to be very certain. But here you are talking about likelihood. At what point do you determine that?
It has a likelihood of
absolutely
causing fear and panic.
Causing fear and panic. That is open to so many
but just like any other
varied opinion.
But just like any
that
other
shouldn't
law,
be the case in criminal laws.
Are these not elements that can be broken down and properly explained? Examples given. Is there no precedent to guide the process? But before I let you answer that question, let me go to Professor Koko Asare, who is joining us via Zoom. Prof, you're welcome to our front.
Thank you, Raymond, and good afternoon to my brother Agalga over there.
Prof, the Member of Parliament has already taken the position that this is a repressive law. In fact, he doesn't believe it actually engenders the freedom of expression. He uses words like it's fluid, it's difficult, and there's no certainty in it. When I read the things you write on Facebook, I get the impression you are utterly against such a law. But do you agree that the law itself is not properly couched?
Well, that's a very good question. And we really, when we talk about freedom of expression and its limitations, have to be careful in how we discuss the topic, because too many different things tend to be lumped together, and there are nuances under the law. Clearly, we all would believe that speech, freedom of expression, important as it is, has lawful and permissible limitations. I could cite several anti-pornography laws, for instance, public order laws, for instance, defamation, for instance, and so on. So the question always is, what is permissible and what is not? Section 208, like Section 207, are actually examples of public order laws. Facially, as written, I really don't have a problem with it. As applied is my problem, because the law is being applied as if it was a law on libel. If that is the case, then it means that law enforcement is doing a runaround the repeal of the criminal libel law and reintroducing the criminal libel law under Section 207 and Section 208, which are designed for cases such as someone coming to the radio and falsely saying there's a bomb at the stadium or there's fire at some crowded place, which then causes fear and panic in the public. So Section 207 and 208, if they are applied restrictively in the limited sense that they are designed to stop the dissemination of false information that disrupts the public life, then I have no problem with that. But currently, it's being applied by the police. Unfortunately, the judiciary doesn't stop them, because it seems to me that there is no anti-speech prosecution that our judges do not like. Anything you take to them, you can write anything that you want, and they are likely to remand someone for 2 weeks, and they are likely to enforce a law that is not on any ordinary reading consistent with what the police has brought them. So the short answer to your question, Raymond, is I have no difficulty with Section 207, which is a law that deals with public peace. Yeah. Has nothing to do with the falsity of the allegation. It has something to do with whether you use threatening or insulting or abusive words. For instance, if somebody is making loud noise after midnight in a residential area, or somebody goes to a funeral and start insulting people, there's a proper place for such a law. And Section 208, on the other hand, deals with false statements that are likely to incite fear and panic. Fear and panic here meaning it disrupts the normal public life. I think that is a good law, but I also think the way the law is being applied is completely wrong. So I have no difficulty with the law as written. I have a difficulty with the law as applied.
But if a law as written gives people the opportunity to misapply it, is it not problematic, ab initio?
All laws give people an opportunity to misapply. Law is not science. That's why we have judges. And that's why I also said the problem really is not just the police, because the police would take anything to the court. It is up to the court to actually read the law to the police people and say, look, just looking at your charge sheet, your elements, the elements of the crime are not met, and so I'm going to throw this out without putting the person in jail or holding him in cell or remanding the person. Furthermore, we are witnessing too many cases of people being held by the police beyond the statutory allowed 48 hours with no consequence at all. They go to the judge and they say, well, judge, we held him for more than 48 hours because we tried to reach the Chief Justice and we couldn't find the Chief Justice. And the judge said, okay, no. I mean, if you have a law without consequence, then it's better not to have the law. Judges should from now on tell the police, if you can't bring the person before me within the statutory allowed 48 hours, then I'm going to let the person go and just throw away the charge. If they do that, you see that the police are going to more and more comply because there is a consequence of non-compliance. Right now, it is just a funny law because it says 48 hours. But if I don't bring the person in 48 hours, what happens? Nothing happens. I get a good laugh, the judge gets a good laugh, and the society thinks we have a 48-hour law, but we don't. Here again, the distinction is the law itself as written is fine, 48 hours. But as applied, the 48 hours law is being bastardized. Most of our problems arise because we don't apply our laws very carefully. And this is the situation that we have ourselves in. The law is going to be written in a way that allows some latitude in its interpretation and so on. But it is up to the judge to ensure that the law is not being abused, to imprison people when they haven't done anything, and to take rights away from people that they have been given under the Constitution. The other problem I have with laws, the application, and the country is that most of us, if not all of us, would agree, for instance, that speech should not be criminalized. The difficulty is only half of us are at any point in time willing to fight for that. We fight for that when we are not in government. Then as soon as we go to government, we then apply the same laws that we were fighting for when we were not in government.
That's an interesting point.
No society can be run in this way and make progress.
I'll come to you again because
sure.
I'm now interested in the way forward in dealing with this. If it's the application, can we change the people that apply the law, or they need to be better educated on how to apply the law? Is it willful ignorance, or they are just bent on misapplying this particular law? Those are things I should be exploring with you. But let me come back to the Member of Parliament. The professor believes that the difference here is not merely the letters in the law. He believes that's okay. Yes. But he believes it's the application that you politicians and your friends in the police, because, I mean, the Interior Ministry controls or is supposed to be supervising the work of the police one way or the other. It's how they apply that and how the judiciary tends to sit aside and watch that happen consistently. Yes. Do you agree?
So, first of all, Prof has raised quite a number of interesting issues.
Yeah.
I think one of the issues he raised in relation to Section 208 is that the Section 208, which is on publication of false news, gives the state a leeway to reintroduce the repealed criminal libel laws that all of us agree it was repressive to press freedom and so on and so forth. Now, if that is the case, there is justification for its repeal.
Okay.
Now, you need to advert your mind to the fact that even in the US, which is generally regarded as a model for
democracy, free speech,
the free speech, etc., do you know that there is no statutory repeal on criminal libel?
Really?
Rather, what the courts did in the US, for instance, in 1964, there is a Supreme Court decision, Garrison and Louisiana. The court actually stated that, look, where criminal libel laws are tailored, right, to target speech, right, that vilified particular groups or that was likely to lead to public disorder, then there was no problem. This is the US Supreme Court speaking in relation to criminal libel laws. You see? So if you establish the linkage between Section 208, and Prof noted that Section 208 and 207 are laws that are tailored to deal with public order strictly. So you need a strict interpretation to be able to do justice to persons brought before the law courts. But you see, because there is the tendency to misapply those provisions and criminalize the right to expression freely, free expression, free speech, then you find them running counter to the Constitution. They run counter because...
But that means that virtually every provision in our laws are subject to the same abuse.
Well, not necessarily. Of course, laws can be subject to abuse. But in this particular case, insofar as Section 208 gives a leeway for criminal libel laws which have long been repealed in our country to be reintroduced, then there is a real problem that needs to be dealt with.
Is it not the interpretation of it that's problematic?
Well, the interpretation can be problematic, and that is why I cited the Supreme Court authority in the US. In this country, we made a lot of there was a lot of talk, about criminal libel, and we ended up repealing it in 2001.
Yeah.
I'm saying that even in the most liberal of democracies in the United States, there is no repeal. Rather, what the Supreme Court has done is to endorse the existence of criminal libel if it is tailored to deal with public order related offenses.
Okay, so to you, we could have kept the criminal libel.
No, that's not the point.
Yeah, because I mean that's the point I'm getting from you consistently.
No, that's not the point I'm making.
Yeah.
I'm saying that just as we are making the case for the retention of Section 208, and I get that from Prof's argument.
Yes.
That there is nothing wrong per se with Section
the letter of
208 and 207.
Yeah.
It is the mode of application
that
is problematic. And I am saying that, listen, in this country, because we know there would always be challenges with the application of laws. Our democracy is still not mature. So, for instance, Prof expects
but is that a legitimate excuse?
It is.
Really, a legitimate excuse?
It is.
That in the 21st century...
So, in this country, most of the time, you actually need legislative intervention to deal with certain issues or crises when they emerge. If you want to leave them to say some other fora for the right decisions to be made, you may be found wanting. So if you have a law that gives us leeway to reintroduce a law that was deemed to be reprehensible, then let us tackle those provisions themselves.
Those in the police, those in the Ministry of Interior, those in the judiciary, they are all public officers, right? They are bound by their discretionary exercise of power to be fair, candid, and reasonable. So would anybody's fair, candid, and reasonable application of the law be problematic?
Well, in this country, I am happy that I'm beginning to see some semblance of a fair application of that section. At least somebody who is not politically aligned, right, has been dealt with, but under different provision of the law. He's been charged with treason. Yeah. Because his statement was supposed to be threatening and so on. So he's been and so on. I'm talking about Womevo. Now, Vomao, right? Yeah. Okay. You have Abronye DC, who is a political actor, a known political actor in this country. He has also accused former President Mahama of plotting to stage a coup in concert with Al-Qaeda, a notorious terror group. Yeah. He's not been spared. He's been charged under this provision. If that is anything to go by, one would say, okay, it doesn't matter who is involved here. The police are applying the law in an even and equal manner. It doesn't
but
matter.
If you misapply the law in an even manner, is it justice in any way?
So those are real fears that Ghanaians entertain. Okay. And justifiably so. But me, the point I'm making is that if we all agree that criminal libel law, which was repealed in 2001, was bad for our democracy, it was a threat to media freedom and free speech. Today, we are beginning to realize, it has suddenly dawned on us, that Section 208 in particular on the publication of false news gives the law enforcement agencies the opportunity to attempt to reintroduce criminal libel law. Well, that calls for legislative intervention.
I'll come back to you, but let me go to Prof on this particular one, because, I mean, you are insisting that that's the way forward, right?
Yes, that's so.
Well, let me go to Prof. Would any attempt to use legislation to fix the problem be a feasible one, Prof?
Well, it depends on timing, because I believe this should be litigated in the courts. I mean, the people who have been charged under Section 208 and Section 207 should remove the case if they can, and they should be able to do that, to go to the Supreme Court to seek an interpretation that their speech rights are being unduly interfered with in violation of the Constitution and in violation of the spirit of the repeal of the criminal libel laws. Now, one of the problems people have, I think, is that they are beginning to lose confidence in the judiciary. And it's because of some of the rulings that the judiciary gives on.
I'll come to you on that. For instance, the matter of 48 hours has been pronounced upon in Martin Prebu number 4, but the violation recently happened again. So what's the guarantee that a pronouncement by the highest court of the land, which ought to be, respected by all, would influence anybody further taking action on this matter?
Consequences. That's what I'm saying, consequences. If they say 48 hours and you don't follow it, you let the accused person go free. If you do that 3 times, the police will learn. Police in every society, they have their own incentives. They like to play with the law. It is judges that stop the police from playing their games. Even in the US, and you guys mentioned US, the US police is notorious for doing all kinds of games. Yeah. But the reason they are not able to get away with it most of the time is because the judges give them a pushback. So if the law is clear that it's 48 hours, and we say if you don't bring him in 48 hours, he goes free, you will see that people will change their behavior. Likewise, if you go to the court and the court said, look, Section 207 and 208 should be decoupled from libel issues, and the proper place to resolve libel issues are in the civil court, then whoever, as a policeman, does not follow that should be punished. If you start giving, if you start applying the law in a way that those who do not follow the law are penalized, there will be learning and people will start following the law. Our laws to the police, to the society, and to everyone else appear to be suggestions. You know, if you like, you follow them. If you don't follow them, nothing happens. Well, if they are suggestions, then people will sometimes not follow them and sometimes follow them, depending on their mood. The courts have to start taking their responsibility as sentinels of our rights and as bastions of the law. They have to take that seriously, and that means they have to hold the police accountable. If we can't do that, then I agree with my brother Agaga that there has to be legislative intervention.
Now, there is one point that's also been raised about fair application of this law. I mean, to some, so far as independent people, media men, and also people belonging to the government have all been arrested and possibly being prosecuted under this same law, regardless of the interpretation of it, it's fair because it's applied to all.
No. That's a very wrong way to think about fairness. Most of the times, we frame everything in terms of NPP versus NDC. Is it an NPP? Is it an NDC? This conversation has nothing to do with NPP or NDC. This conversation has something to do with what the colonialists left for us. The colonialists left a whole lot of laws for us with the mindset that we are not matured. And so if you allow us to talk freely, we'll just start fighting and so on. And 60 years after, we continue to actually vindicate what it is and the views that they had of us. That, hey, yeah, we are Ghanaians. We are not matured. If you let people come to the TV and say whatever they want, we'll go to war, we'll kill ourselves, and so on and so forth. This is completely insane. Here is a country that has had almost 30 years of uninterrupted constitutional law and constitutional rule. And we are here debating whether some comedian comes on TV and says, oh, I'm going to do this, and then all of a sudden, people are thrown into fear and panic. Most of the times, the things that people say, that the police hold them accountable, are not even heard by 98% of the people. It is actually the police that publicizes this so-called offensive speech by arresting these people and by going after them in Gestapo style and so on. We have to grow up. We have had this debate since independence. The PDA that sent people like J.B. Dankwa to jail, the dismissal of Dumogan, the Abbott case, the Tommy Thompson case, the Apostle Barnabas case, so many of them in our history, and we are still here quibbling about whether somebody who comes to the TV or the radio station to make an admittedly offensive speech, should that person be sent to jail? No, we are long past that because we believe that people who are controversial, confrontational, and so on, we will allow them to talk. But at the same time, we have so many people who can also make rational, calculated, and thoughtful speech. And in that exchange, the best ideas will prevail. That's the way we got to think about speech. We shouldn't get rattled merely because we don't like what somebody says. 99% of the time, I don't like what people say and the way they say it, and I myself will never speak that way. But I'm going to die for their right to say that, knowing very well that nobody is going to be able to convince me with propaganda. If you bring propaganda, I'll bring facts to check you out. And that's how we should do. We should have good education systems that train our citizens to be able to distinguish between propaganda and truth. And if you train your citizens enough, you are not going to be afraid of speech.
I guess we can, on this note, take a break, chew on what we've just been discussing so far. When we come back, we continue the conversation. The chairman of the Parliamentary Committee for Constitutional Legal Affairs will also be joining this conversation. We'll be moving a little bit forward after this break. You're welcome back. This is Upfront. So our conversation today is that section of our laws in the criminal code that says that if you publish false news with the intent to cause fear and panic and disrupt public peace, you can be arrested and dealt with criminally. That is what the general clamor for. It's for something to be done about it. In studio here is a former Deputy Minister of Interior, under whose tenure this law has been applied before, or the police are supposed to be applying such laws. And also, joining us via Zoom is Professor Kwaku Asare. And as I have known him, and as he has put out there, a consistent opponent of the abuse of the law. Now, that's where we are with this conversation. What the law is, why it is repressive, why it ought to be dealt with one way or the other. The proposals on the table are two: proper application and a judiciary that is active and strong enough to reject any such improper application of this particular law. Then on the other side, a repeal. Now, in Parliament, are there any plans to push ahead with your quest for repeal?
No, at least on the part of the state, this issue hasn't come up at all.
Really?
Yes. So there is no sponsored bill before Parliament from the Attorney General's outfit. I guess what we...
But there are people in government today who had formed the opinion that this was a repressive law way back.
Well, so the members of Parliament have the opportunity to bring up private members' bills to deal with legislations they feel are repressive for the entire Parliament to consider. So maybe that is the way to go, because I doubt.
But you're also a member of Parliament.
I doubt whether the state will take up this challenge. So I have plans, and I would act together with some other colleagues who think like I do to see if we can put together some bill.
Private members.
Yes, private members bill to deal with Section 208 in particular. Prof made an interesting argument about decoupling. So let's decouple conduct that has the potential to breach public order and peace from mere publications that in themselves cannot result in a breach of public order and peace. Let me give you an example. Baker, I tried to pronounce the name, but I got it wrongly. Vomawo made a publication about his own intention to stage a coup. He actually descended heavily on the military for not doing so. He was picked up upon arrival from the UK and has been charged with treason.
Yeah, and I'm reminding you that this is a case that's already...
It is pending. So, yeah. I know. I'm a lawyer. I'm not going to make... right.
So nice reminders are important.
The point I'm trying to make is that sometimes the investigative agencies of state, right, are too quick to arrest. And when they do, the manner of arrest is what actually brings matters to the fore, and people's attention are drawn to the fact that something even exists. So the manner of arrest, or the point I'm trying to make is that sometimes you can investigate. And when you do, you must satisfy yourself that the publication out there, and that is where I started from in my earlier remarks, that the 208 is too fluid. At what point do you establish that the publication that you may be considering can result in a breach of public order or peace? At least we should be giving some specifics. That, for me, is missing in Section 208. And yet we are talking about criminal law and enforcement. So certainty is one cardinal rule that you should not gloss over.
But are we not making a mountain out of a mountain? This is a misdemeanor, isn't it? Section 208 is a misdemeanor.
So what?
Because we consider the crime not to be a big crime.
You can go to jail even if you are charged with a misdemeanor.
I get your point.
Yes. So the point we're simply making is that if it is about publication of false news in itself, right, the corresponding punishment once it can land you in jail, would for all intents and purposes be disproportionate. But so it is disproportionate punishment for anybody to be punished.
To be going to jail.
Criminally.
For publishing false news.
Absolutely. You can have other remedies. So false news is published. If the false news targets an individual, your remedies could lie in a civil forum. Go to the civil courts, sue, extract damages.
But in this case, it's not targeted at an individual. It's actually an offense which relates to public peace. So it's offense
against public peace. It may or may not be.
Because let's, for example, couch it this way.
Yes.
Yes. If you create the impression, and this has happened before, where they circulated messages that suggested that there's an earthquake happening somewhere, and people left their homes, some say they were robbed in the process and all of that, is that not problematic enough?
That is problematic enough, but there are instances where this particular law has been applied.
Yeah.
But that example wouldn't fit in, you know, at all times. So let's take the particular case where somebody is accused of just stating, publishing news to the effect that the president's family traveled on a presidential jet to do shopping in London, in London and back. Seriously speaking, well, this is also sub judice, so I should be careful. But there are similar stories. And when they happen and we hear that somebody has been picked up by the police and charged, you ask yourself, but how would this result in a breach of public order or peace? Then at that point, you begin to have the belief or feeling that, look, the law is being applied in a way so as to gag people from expressing themselves, from speaking. And so that is where we have the challenge.
Do you all agree that publication of false news is bad? Do you all agree?
It's bad.
Yes. Is it not bad?
So if I say
is it undesirable?
It's undesirable,
yes.
But the punishment must be proportionate.
So in order to make people responsible, and that's at the core of the defense here, those who defend the law say the height to which irresponsible speech is permitting our airwaves and elsewhere is becoming too much.
Yes.
So you have to set examples. That's what they're trying to say. So that you apply laws to set examples,
yes,
so that you regulate the space properly.
You see, this law, 208, also has something to do with media freedoms. So in this discussion, don't lose sight of the fact that media freedoms could be hijacked by the application of this particular law.
Okay.
Media freedoms. So you must have a holistic view of the matter. Don't just limit it to people who go out there and publish fake news with the intention of causing fear and panic. That is another matter altogether. But those who, in the course of their line of duty, journalists like you, you put out something there, maybe in a newspaper or on a Joy, you sit here and make a statement which turns out to be false. And then somebody, out of malice, stretches the matter in a way to suggest that, look, the statement you made, the harmless statement you made, has the likelihood to cause fear and panic and picks you up. Raymond, you may, at the end of the day, be able to defend yourself and the courts would acquit and discharge you. But in the interim, the law enforcement agencies, if their intention is to clamp down on you as a journalist, may have detained you for 48 hours and say, oh, the Constitution allows us to detain you for 48 hours. We're investigating you. Just to inspire fear in people like your good self. So when you are discussing this law,
I get you.
You must look at it from the context of the criminal libel law as at the time it existed and how it was applied.
I get you, but they attempt to make it look like me and my colleagues are also... Prof, I need to have your view on this matter. The Member of Parliament is insisting that it also restricts the performance of media freedom. Is it a view you share? The application of this law under the very circumstances we have found recently?
Absolutely. Not just the media, but every Ghanaian. Because when you invited me, I was debating whether to show up or not, because I don't want to show up and say something and then find myself being wanted by the police. So you're not only chilling journalists, ordinary Ghanaians as well feel the effect of this. And to me, we have litigated all these issues and have decided that we would prefer an irresponsible media occasionally than a media that feels intimidated. And so this is a debate that has been resolved.
But that, it sounds like what the president has said before.
That's what I'm saying. Every Ghanaian believes that we should leave the media alone, except 50% of Ghanaians tend to want it enforced at any point in time. When people are in government, they don't want that enforced. When they are out of government, then they want the law to be enforced. That has been our problem since independence. There are no core values that all Ghanaians will say, no matter what, no matter who, no matter why, we are going to say, look, don't play with media rights, don't be corrupt, be, and so on. What do we believe in as a country? The second thing I want to say is that our police, they always overcharge. I remember in 2010, I think Kennedy, my good friend Kennedy Ajapon, had said something about waging a war if NPP loses the election or something like that. And the police went to get him and charge him with genocide and treason. Yeah. And when I read the charge, I'm saying, who are really teaching these people the law? How are you going to charge one man making, rambunctious talk with treason and genocide? We all know it won't go anywhere, and it did not go anywhere. So we just as a society need to start being honest with ourselves. I don't think people do not know what I'm saying. People know what I'm saying, but for whatever reason, people act differently when they are in power than when they are not in power. And it is that inconsistency that perpetuates these laws that are being used against us. Finally, let me go to Section 208 again. And let me be clear that Section 208 is not a unique law to Ghana. It is known in the common law. All countries try to protect the public peace and try to ensure that people do not engage in holes that causes the ambulance and the fire service and other people to be misled and to do things that basically are wasting resources. So there is a good reason why we have Section 208. The meaning of Section 208 is known. For instance, we know that it has to be decoupled from libel.
Okay.
We know that the law has to be applied such that the threatened action has a high likelihood of producing imminent disturbance of public peace. We know that. The law is there. The common law is there. So you cannot just go and pick someone who is on TV talking. If he's talking and nothing is happening, you cannot say he's threatening public peace, because at the time that he was speaking, no peace was threatened. These are things that are known, but are not being followed. And I have to repeat again that our judges are the only ones who can stop this behavior, because we assume they know the law. And when the police show up with these charges that are meaningless, they should throw the charges out and they should caution the police, and often they should let the accused person go. If we don't do that, there will be no learning. 5 years from now, we'll be back talking about the same thing, because the same things that I'm talking about, if you read our history, J.B. Dankwa spoke about the same thing. Allah Ajete spoke about the same thing. Nanadu spoke about the same thing. Atamil spoke about the same thing. And I'm here speaking about the same thing. There's nothing new. Section 208 is not a new law.
Prof, if I could just crave your indulgence for a second, I've been joined by the chairman of the Constitutional, Parliamentary and Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament, the Honorable Kwame Enyimadu Entry. Honorable, you're welcome to our front. Because of our time, I just want to go straight to the point. The clamor is that something ought to be done at least about the application of Section 208 and its allied laws so that it's not seen to be repressive, not only of media freedom, but of the general freedoms that the people of this republic are expected to feel, especially mindful of the recent wave of arrests and prosecutions. Is it something that you agree to?
Yes and no. I think that I have a reason for saying yes, and I have a reason for saying no. The reason why I say something must be done is because there's been some argument that it is closer to the criminal libel law, and therefore that law must be scrapped. The other side of the argument is what the professor is talking about, that even if you look at the wording of the law and the title of the section, the heading, it says a lot. So we wouldn't want the situation where anybody just gets up and that's what you want, which will lead to the breach of the peace. So it is important that we guard against that. But I think that we need to develop this better and then see if the law is there. I think if the law is being applied very well, I think it's a good thing. But there are instances where I would think that politicians, they use it to their advantage. To that extent, we need to do something about it.
Just so I ask you this direct question, Honorable, would you support any attempt to repeal this particular law, even if it's a private member's bill?
I wouldn't know now, because if it's coming with any bill that comes before Parliament, there will be a memorandum attached to the bill. And then we would have to look at the mischief that if the law is there, whether the present law, the mischief that it is causing, that any bill that is coming is taken to cure. And being the chairman of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, I must not be in a haste to say that I will be convinced by the arguments that will come alongside the memorandum.
The final question is a direct one to you. Is it time for us to remove this law or whichever law that actually seeks to criminalize the publication of false news as a philosophical position? Do you support that?
Well, I yes and no again. It's your first question.
I want a yes or no, so that it's a bit more direct to the answer. Forgive me.
It's yes and no, not all. It's yes and no. The question is that why would somebody intentionally, looking at the wording of the law, get up and say that I want to publish a false information, false publication that will lead to the breach of the peace? It is not, I mean, it's about time that people must realize that they don't have to go about tell lies and whatnot, something that is sensational, when they already know that what they are doing is false.
I'm afraid we may have to leave this here, and maybe we'll deal with this a lot deeper later on. But final words from you, Honorable. Yes. So you were telling me about what you and your colleagues have plans of doing. Do we have any timelines? Is this going to happen anytime soon? Or you may defer this until until you are invited?
I am very committed to championing this course that I have just disclosed to you in relation to 208.
A private member's bill?
Yes, yes, yes. To look at this particular provision vis-a-vis the repeal of the criminal libel law, and whether or not the continuous existence of this law
But is that not obvious?
We shall.
What has happened?
Sorry?
Is that not obvious? Is there no unanimity?
No. I just want to assure him that the content of the memorandum would be very convincing and he would buy into it.
Honorable, there's a question though. I mean, that's not been clear so far. Are you going for removal of Section 208 from our laws, or you are going for remodeling and some form of, if you like, review of it to update it in tandem with the modern practices?
You see, Raymond, I could propose that Section 208 in its entirety be taken out of the Criminal and Other Offences Act. But other members, and Professor Asari made the argument that, look, we should try and do some decoupling.
Balancing act.
Yes. Public order, yes, we must protect and safeguard. But false news, the publication of same, which does not cause any harm to the public and law and order, we shouldn't necessarily criminalize those ones. So if you are able to draw the line, then you would be probably talking about a review, would come out with provisions which would decouple criminal libel issues from the real issues of public order.
Okay.
So that could come from members in the course of the consideration of
But what you're going for is a revocation of...
Yes, I will start from a revocation, and if other people canvass very compelling arguments, and you see, before I set foot in this studio, I didn't even advert my mind to the angle from which Prof proceeded.
Yeah.
But listening to him, I am convinced that there is the need for us to strike a balance between public order and free speech. So it's worth considering.
Thank you so much. And the Honourable Member of Parliament is the ranking on the Interior Committee in Parliament. He's also a former Deputy Minister of Interior. Professor Koko Asari joined us, and unfortunately, I can't get to him because my time is up. Folks, that's where we end today's edition of UpFront. Coming up on Joy News Prime is really one wonderful engagement you should be interested in. The topic is how we save the environment or exploiting our natural resources. The case of developing countries like Ghana. Exactly what are we doing? Wonderful set of guests for that conversation. That's coming up in a matter of minutes from now, so don't go away.